Hawaii's forests are an essential part of our ecosystem. They're home to thousands of native plants and species. They provide our fresh drinking water, and they protect our beaches from hazardous runoff and sediment. But experts say Hawaii's native forests are being wiped out by a number of threats, and it's a race against time to save them. So what can we do? Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of Insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Daryl Huff. After centuries of development and assault by invasive species, Hawaii's native forests are suffering, and with them, thousands of plants and animals found nowhere else in the world. This also impacts the island environment. Our forests are living sponges, capturing rain and mist that recharge our freshwater aquifers. They offer protection from drought and floods and are revered by Hawaiian culture with the rest of the natural world. Saving native forests is a challenge that demands cooperation from a diverse group of stakeholders. We're asking our panel tonight if it can be done. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email or call in your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. Now to our guests. Flint Hughes is an ecologist with the U.S. Forest Service. For the past 25 years, he's been conducting research on Hawaii's forests, focusing on the impacts of non-native species and protecting our ohia forests from rapid ohia death. He and his family reside in Hilo. David Smith is with the Department of Land and Natural Resources and is currently the administrator in the Forestry and Wildlife Division. Born and raised in Hawaii, he spent extensive time in the mountains and ocean and earned a bachelor's degree in biology. Christy Martin is the Program Manager and Information Officer for the Coordinating Group on Alien Pest Species, a project of the University of Hawaii at Manoa Pacific Cooperative Studies Unit. She's also a co-founder of the Pacific Regional Invasive Species and Climate Change Management Network. And appearing by Zoom from Hilo is Joseph Kualiʻi Camara. Born and raised on Molokai, he is the Resource Manager for the Department of Hawaiian Homelands Land Management Division. DHHL manages 200,000 acres of land across the state. And let me start with David Smith with DLNR. Can you tell us, what is a native forest and how much do we have and how much have we lost?
The native forests were here before people were, and they evolved over, probably over 1 million years. And they obviously were just from the top of the mountains right down to the ocean, and forests can go right down to the water's edge. We've lost a significant portion of that. There's a footprint. I think the estimate on the Hawaiian footprint was about 15% of the land, and a lot of that was converted into sustainable agricultural systems and ways to live on the land and grow food and whatnot. But Hawaiians also protected, especially a lot of the Mauka forests, the Wauakua, which is a realm of the gods, and they revered the forest, and they recognized that the water that they depended on out in the middle of the ocean came from the forests, and so that was a big portion of why they were protecting those areas.
Kualiʻi Camara from DHHL, can you go a little bit more into that? What was the Hawaiians' relationship with the native forests?
Well, so I can't speak for everyone. So in Hawaii, but what I've been taught is that everything, so in Hawaii is family, and it's the Hawaiians had a so familial relationship with their environment, and they had generational knowledge of how to fit themselves into the environment to enhance the environment. And we look at our ahupua'a system. A lot of people focus on the agriculture. And so what Hawaiians modified to fit their needs. But if you look at the ahupua'a system, it really was a system for the perpetuation of the water cycle. And so Dave was saying, so we had the Wauakua, but we also had the Volcanaka, so specific areas, elevations, so ecosystems that were modified, and other ecosystems and other areas like the Vauma'ukele, or the damp, the areas where our soils were always moist and and actually the soil was actually another container for water. The Wawakua, of course, where the mist hits the mountain, and the Kuahivi, Kualono, Kuahea, the upper regions. So everything was kind of so in its place, And I think the Hawaiians were very cognizant of their impact on the land, and where they would modify and where they would leave for things like ecosystem services. And a big thing for Hawaii, or for Hawaiians, was the perpetuation of these water cycles, making sure that water continued to flow.
Let me move on to Christy Martin with the invasive species, multiple invasive species organizations. What was the natural fauna of Hawaii? What were the pieces that held it all together up in these forests in terms of the local species?
Yeah, so things that arrived here on their own through wind, wings, and waves, those formed the basis. Those original colonists that got here on their own formed the basis of our native species, and some of them survived, were able to reproduce, and some of them weren't. So those original colonists and all of their descendants, some of them changed over, millennia. So that a bird that may have arrived here, blown off course in a storm, over a long time may have a longer curved beak because it was getting nectar from a long curved flower. And so when you look at Hawaii's native biota from these, descend from all of these colonists, it is really unique. It is almost like a Dr. Seuss land of species that you just can't imagine. And we like to think, that if Darwin had landed in Hawaii instead of the Galapagos, we wouldn't be talking about Galapagos finches. We'd be talking about Hawaiian honey creepers.
It's interesting.
Because they're so unique.
Flint Hughes with the Forest Service. Wait, did I say Forest Service? Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, good. I knew federal and
right.
got lost, but
That's correct.
But what is the effect of the invasive species? What's the primary? I've got a caller, Sarah, asking, what's the biggest invasive species in Hawaii? Is there any one thing that we could point to that threatens the forest the most?
Well, I guess in general, thinking about the archipelago as a whole, the surveys that have been done recently, systematic surveys using multiple forest plots located all across the islands, about 250 of them scattered around, have given us a pretty good picture of the balance between native species and non-native species. Good news, ohia is the most common native species, and it's estimated from the sampling to be about 280 million stems, trees of ohia across the islands. That sounds like a lot. Strawberry guava, by V, if you want to call it that, represents about 440 million stems. So it's by far the most abundant.
Strawberry guava is an invasive species.
Is a non-native invasive species.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's able to invade intact forests fairly readily. It definitely benefits from disturbance, but it's capable of invading intact forests as well. And so I think that's probably our number one most difficult non-native species to deal with.
Dave Smith with DLNR. So where is the best place that someone could go and say, look at a native forest and appreciate it without harming it by hiking through it or breaking a fence or something like that?
Well, it depends on what island you're on, of course. There's especially on the neighbor islands, there's a number of places where you can get up into good native forest and you can stay on established trails or be in parks and whatnot. On Oahu, you can see really nice intact native forest off the H3 freeway, just on the town side of the Ko'olau Summit. There's some beautiful Koa Ohia Uluhe forest up in there.
And what are the features of a healthy forest? What are the key features of a healthy forest?
Well, the native forest, even if you don't know that much about plants, when you get into a native forest, it just has a really nice balance to it. Everything is growing together more cooperatively. You don't see vines growing over things and killing them. Vines will use a tree to get up and use the structure to get up and get some light, but they don't grow over it and kill it. And so the native forest has evolved over so much time that it's learned to coexist. And so you just get into this forest that has a really nice feel to it, nice balance, and then you get into some of these non-native forests, like the things Flint's talking about, and you'll see species just taking over, and one species growing to the detriment of others and whatnot. And in the native forest, you have a lot of diversity.
If I can add one thing to it, one of the most amazing things about a Hawaii forest is that it's got many levels, and it's got strangely some open spaces where exactly what Dave said, nothing's really rushing to fill in that gap. So it's got a tall trees, it's got a shrub layer, it's got a bush layer, it's got a fern layer, and underneath it's moss, and that makes a really good system to step down water as it falls, so it doesn't hit the ground so hard and have so much runoff. That's a classic Hawaiian forest, is very protected.
Yeah, and it really, you said that word, a sponge. It really acts as a sponge, all of those components together to absorb the water that's coming in so that it gets into our aquifers, gets into our groundwater. It's kind of like if you pour water over a sponge, it absorbs it. Say a piece of cardboard, pour water over it, just runs right off. It'll absorb some of it, but it runs right off. And that's, when you have these transformed systems, that's often what you end up with is much less water storage, more water being transpired moved out of the plants as well.
Kualiʻi Camara with DHL, on the lands that you manage, how high a priority is preserving or increasing forest versus, providing homestead ranch lands or homestead agriculture or homestead houses? How do you guys balance that priority?
That is a very good question, and it is a very it ties into the larger Hawaii community, the social challenges of valuing our native forests. So while I'm still providing for the needs of our community, for DHL, it's a Native Hawaiian land trust for the betterment of Native Hawaiians, and for the lands that I manage is the Wawakua of Mauna Kea, which is 56,000 acres on Mauna Kea, and we have a responsibility to provide for our people, but we also have this very special landscape that provides for the life of the whole island. So we try and find that balance and look at and try and tie the health of the Hawaiian people to the health of the island, and the health of the mountain, and try and tie those things together. But definitely it is a challenge, and not everybody sees things the same way. And it's a challenge, and everybody has their own story and their own value system. But it's something that I'm definitely work towards.
Dave, why is it so important that we're hearing about the water? Are we still losing forests at a rapid pace, or has it stabilized with management, or where are we in this battle?
No, we definitely continue to lose ground, and there's been a lot of support lately. We've been doing a lot of fencing and trying to halt some of the disturbance, but the main drivers are a lot of the introduced animals and then fire, and those types of things just eat away at the forest. And then with that disturbance comes in invasive species. They find footholds when you get disturbance in the forest. And it's continuously losing battle. A lot of these introduced or invasive species get over here without their normal control agents, and so they don't have the plants or animals or diseases or insects or whatever that are controlling them in their native habitat. They get to Hawaii and it's just like 365 growing season, and so they're able to grow very quickly, and a lot of them are adapted to filling in, to exploiting disturbance, whereas in a native forest, disturbance isn't really a a thing that most of the native Hawaiian species are adapted to.
Christy Martin, so what's the strategy? I mean, it just sounds overwhelming. I mean, how do you strategize? It's so big, it's so many places, it's so many different microclimates, so many different invasive species, and people think of deer and they think of rats and they think of even all these other, and then there's lots of insects that are invasive too, right? So what's the strategy? How do you start to protect and then grow within these protected areas?
You know, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, well, a friend of mine told me at one point, and I love elephants, but he said, eat that elephant one bite at a time, you know. And that's really, I think, what we try to do, because there's so many things going on. There's so many issues that need to be worked on. But there are solutions out there. I don't want people watching to think that, you know, it's a lost cause. I hear that all the time. Part of my job is outreach, and people say, oh, it's a done deal. It isn't. Some of the tools are available. You know, Dave was talking about fencing. Okay, well, that doesn't keep the insects out. Well, what can we do about the insects? Well, some of them we can have, for example, a biological control. We saved the willy-willy, the native dry forest tree, from extinction because it was being attacked by this invasive gall wasp. We saved it through biocontrol. So we need to do fencing, we need to do some biocontrol, we need to do some community projects. We need to get people up there to the Wauakua. And, you know, as maybe the biocontrol is coming in to reduce the vigor of some of these invasive plants, we need to get the people back out there to put the plants back into the ground that are good for the water and maybe that are good at resisting, I'm going to bring fire into the resisting wildfire.
You know, Flint Hughes with the Forest Service is there a priority? Is there an industry, or who is doing this?
Well, first I just want to get to that, but I did want to just also mention, you know, the way we've talked about some of the native species. They seem kind of vulnerable and almost victims, and yet ohia, taking that species as an example, can be very resilient and very tough and able to respond. Some of the work that we've done looking at deforested areas in Puna, where ohia, I mean, just obliterated, bulldozed to the ground, that were ohia forests. 30 years later, they've come back. And we see that in other places. But that's because the conditions were right, weed-free, open substrate, open air for the seedlings to get going and then persevere even in the face of competition from weeds. That can happen, and that will happen if we give these native species a chance, like Christy's talking about. I think back to your question, across the state of Hawaii, with the partners and the institutions that are in place now, we have the structure to tackle a lot of these problems. We just need to, as a people, support them more so that we can take care of our forests together and create a more healthy forest that will help us continue to be healthy across the state as well.
So, Dave Smith, what is the priority? What do you have to do first to protect a forest? It's hard to imagine we can do all of these things at once. I mean, is there a progression?
Yeah, we usually have strategies based on the different forest types. So the main thing to do is protect forests that are already intact. That's your best bet, is to keep them from being disturbed, because then you don't get these openings where invasive species are able to come in. And then we also try to protect areas from fire. So, you know, fire can just eat away at forests. So doing protection for intact native forest, and then you can go into areas that still have quite a bit of native vigor, and you can help them out a little bit. You know, if you can just go in and control a couple of problematic species or some problematic areas, there's still a lot of vigor in the native forest, and the native forest can come back and you know, regrow in a 100% native condition, and we've seen that. And then from there, you know, you can just grade, you know, it's just a gradation of whether you're going back into full pasture areas and planting koa or whatnot. But we've shown a lot of success. I know on the Big Island, there's been areas that were full pasture up on Mauna Kea, and they went in and replanted them with koa, and I was just there. I hadn't been there for 25 years, and here's a native forest, a multi-layered native forest full of native forest birds, including endangered species, right there that used to be wide open pasture. So within our lifetime, you can do this work and be successful.
Kualiʻi, Camara with DHHL, are you seeing that in some of your properties too? Are you able to get DHHL behind that as a project?
Yeah. So for our lands, so go back to your earlier question. Like the social issues are really the biggest thing, and the values, and it's really been a challenge to show everybody, that these lands are resilient. So like Dave was saying, we have these lands that are in everybody's minds as, they've seen it as a pasture for the past 200 years. But, knowing that these lands are resilient and, that we have ohia forests and koa forests there that, if you give them the time and you take the feral cattle off of the mountain, so you're saying, so we'll come back. And I'm really lucky to be up in these spaces and see that restoration being possible. But yeah, it's been a real challenge to share that message out with everyone that there's more to these lands that we've seen over the past 200 years, and just being able to take out the threats and give the forest a chance, and it definitely is resilient and so I'm able to come back. But yeah, for us it's a big social issue. The social issues is to me it's more than the physical issues of being able to do the work, is getting everybody to be able to see the vision of a healthy, restored forest across the landscape.
I have an example of that.
Go ahead.
There's a project that was started. I worked and lived on Maui 20 years ago in conservation. I was working for the Maui Invasive Species Committee. And Art Medeiros, Dr. Medeiros over there, had a vision. He worked with Ulupalakua Ranch to fence off a portion of the land to protect it from the deer and the cattle, and it's just this dry grassland, but there were a few native trees left. He fenced it, got rid of the ungulates, and used volunteers to restore. And now it is a lush and beautiful, moist forest that is, you can measure the moisture difference in the air. We talk about the loss of humidity that makes wildfires so possible. Well, you don't if you have the right plants, and that demonstration forest is there for all to see. And we need to replicate that. It doesn't matter if it's small. It would be great if it were big, but we can start small because that's what shows people that, hey, it can be done. Hey, we're making a difference.
That's really important when it comes to attracting volunteers and young people into an industry, is to actually give them some hope, right? But so what does that look like? Is that a fairly typical model of how to do it? First you fence, then you clear out the big invasive species that you can, and then just let it grow, or are there whole programs where people are planting seedlings for you or stuff like that?
Well, I think it depends on the area, depends on the region, and it depends on the types of stressors to the native ecosystems you're dealing with, and then just address them specifically. So it can take any number of different paths. I think what Christy's just mentioning is having the people available, willing and able to do the work. And I think one thing it just made me think about the Hawaii Conservation Conference this year, which was the first time since COVID that we were able to meet in person. And it was so inspiring to see all the young people coming together, grappling with problems, learning and planning what to do next, and also looking for opportunity. I mean, there is a whole workforce out there of young people that are just dying to take care of our forests.
If you succeed in growing a forest, what's the potential for the environment being changed? Getting more rain, less drought. What's the potential there? How much would you have to grow it to really change the environment?
It is tremendous. So there's been a lot of work. Flint's done some of this work, in fact, but some of the work coming out of the university. The plants in the forest drives the water cycle for our islands. Anybody that lives in Kona, afternoon, you can set your watch by the time the rain happens, because that forest is there and it's driving the moisture cycle to come up, hit the mountain, and then drop its rain. If you don't have that forest with the right plants there, and I'm going to get to the right plant in just a moment, then you break that cycle. And I think that that's what we've seen in a lot of leeward areas. And I want to point very specifically to Lahaina. The strawberry guava, this was the study that was done at the university. Dr. Jambaluka found that strawberry guava in particular, if you compare the amount of water that gets lost from the environment, from the system, for a strawberry guava forest compared to a native ohia forest, you get upwards of 35% on a normal year, more than 50% water loss on a drought year. And guess what? We've been in a drought for the last 100 years. We have a foot less water falling on our forests than we did 100 years ago. And that's resulted in less water for everybody. 22% less water in the streams because of we've got a problem, and it's not necessarily where we can normally notice it, it's in the forest.
Yeah.
Not all green is good.
Kualiʻi Camara with DHHL, I'm thinking that, I spent some time a couple weeks ago with a Kualiʻana farmer outside Lahaina, and he was a younger guy, maybe in his late 20s, early 30s. Is there a generation of Native Hawaiians who are particularly interested in the water issue and trying to restore the natural environment or the environment of old Hawaii through the water? Do you think that that's something that can get people excited and understanding what you're trying to do?
I think that every generation has their champions and their role models, but definitely there's definitely champions coming up who's championing for our waters, but we rely on the intelligence of our ancestors who know that. So there's a Olelo no Iale says, so hahai no ka'ua I ka ulu la'au, where the rain always follows the forest. So we are coming up, and there are people coming up, but our ancestors have been here for generations, and they notice these trends, that when you lose your forest, you lose your water. So I would say yes. So I would say yes, and I'm always hopeful that so people will come up, and then we can pass the Kualiʻanas on to other people. But we rely on the previous generations as well, and the knowledge of our previous generations, and definitely. It's something that maybe the in-between generations have lost a little bit in their value systems, but definitely our kupunas knew very well that the rain follows the forest, and when you lose your forest, you lose your water.
I apologize. I didn't mean to divide the generations so much. I'm just sort of looking for where the excitement and energy is going to come from to do this kind of work, because these guys are restoring their Taroloi by hand with you can't take a bulldozer out because it's there already. And Dave Smith, do you think that there's resource available to do what needs to be done, in terms of this challenge? I mean, is the money there? For example, I know that there's a lot of climate change funds that have developed. Is there a lot of money there, through the climate change movement for this kind of work?
Yeah, the resource restoration management has traditionally been, way underfunded from what we need to move forward quickly. So we kind of move forward on a broad front, but very slowly. Lately, there's been a lot more recognition of what's going on, how we're losing things, how things are changing. A lot of money's been coming in. There's been some really large influx of federal funds, and we've gotten support out of the legislature for a lot of our forest and resource management work. Yeah. So I think there's a growing recognition that we really need to double down on what we're doing and what we're investing, and that it's actually money well spent, and that has a good cost-benefit ratio, putting money into these sorts of natural systems, and the ecosystem services that you get out of that is a very good investment.
At my peril, can I push back against that just a little bit? So one of the hats I wear is with the Invasive Species Advisory Committee, and we're looking at the funding that's coming in for climate mitigation through a lot of congressional funding coming in. What we've noticed, though, is that there is very little language about those intersections between climate change and invasive species. Now, there's individual impacts from both of these major change drivers, but there's very little understanding and articulation about what those synergistic effects are. So when you look at this climate funding that's available, very few invasive species projects are seeing a way to be able to have a clear shot at getting some of that. But clearly, our invasive species issue is going to be exacerbated by climate change, and the only resilience that we can build is if we address invasives. That's the only way we're going to be able to make ourselves more resilient to the warming climate, the lesser rain, is if we address the invasives.
It sounds kind of urgent.
I mean, the urgency is highlighted by the invasive grass, the non-native invasive grass problem that we have across our drier portions of the state. All of those systems, all of those fuels were introduced. They're not native to Hawaii. They're novel systems that are incredibly fire prone. And that's one of the highlight interactions between invasive species and climate change, drought, long-term, both short-term and long-term.
I've got a number of questions now coming in from our viewers, and I want to respect them and put some of these out there because it's interesting. For example, now I live on a ridge, right? And so behind my house is basically nothing but invasive grass and halekoa, and it's owned by a condo association that doesn't even want to do a fire break. But so the question from Eric and Waika'i, for places on Oahu that are overrun with halekoa, we call it halekoa, but it's haulekoa, right? Haole.
Yeah.
I can say haole then. Is it possible to return hillsides to native plants? It would certainly look better. I mean, at a small scale, can people do stuff that makes a difference, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a number, part of it to look at where you are, what the rainfall regime in that area is, what you're dealing with in terms of soil and aspect and whatnot. But, there's a lot of native species that do well in drier environments, and going out and taking out halekoa and putting in something like Milo or some other native species. Lona mea, there's a bunch of things that you can put in. Yep. What I like to try to do is try to figure out what was the natural forest there to begin with, and go with the species that are going to grow naturally. And you can usually figure that out, or there's experts that you can talk to that'll help you out with that. We got a lot of programs that can help out with appropriate plants to grow. But if you put them, the right plant in the right place can do very well. And there's a lot of native species that are a big upgrade over halekoa and grass.
Is it a good idea just to cut them down and hope something grows in, or is it's too far gone for that? You actually have to replace it with some kind of
A lot of those areas are so disturbed, and they've been so for so long, that if you just cut down the halekoa, you're just going to get more halekoa. So in a lot of those cases, and we're having really good success, for instance, in Kailua, on Oahu here above the Hamakua Marsh, we've had a group of volunteers going in there and taking out halekoa forest and putting in native forest, and it looks fabulous, and they're doing such a good job. So using ko and Milo and a'ali'i and a whole suite of native forests, and it's growing up. And like Christy's saying, it just transforms the microenvironment. You go from this, really exposed, dry, hot area, and you create shade, you cool the soil, and you create a much more, an environment that helps those plants thrive.
Kualiʻi, Camara, have you guys got success stories that you like to point to in your management zones? Oh.
Yeah, so we actually have an area on Hawaii Island. So it's in our urban areas. So it's a Kualiʻi. So it's a digital homestead, and it's one of the we have a bunch of critically endangered native species. So we had to develop our homestead. We had to protect our uhi and our wahine no hokula there. So there, we actually have so we have some good places right in the urban areas. So we're able to restore our dryland forest there, and and in Kona especially, those dryland forests are especially rare, and we keep losing our dryland forests. So we do have some pockets of stories of success of forests in our sort of urban areas.
Is that because you mentioned that it was to develop a homestead area there? So is that what tends to happen? Is it you'll want to do a homestead area, and then around it you want to, and in it you want to use the native plants and so on, and that helps essentially restore natural growth, but it's also associated with increasing homesteads. So those things work out together.
Yeah. So sometimes so things are moved forward by because of required mitigation, but definitely it is a place that people can pass by and see a glimpse of what was in Kona 100, 200 years ago. So there are some pockets of hope, and like Dave was saying, there's area these native plants have been growing there for thousands of years, so they don't take that much water. They don't require a lot of care. That if you give them the space and you keep the animals out and you can mitigate for fire, these plants actually thrive in those areas with so little assistance from humans.
I got a couple of interesting questions about people continuing to introduce and propagate bad plants. Like it said, the panel mentioned the strawberry guava trees. People don't know how bad it is. They're planted at a museum, and the problem is the guavas all over the ground are just spreading seeds to the forest. And then other than this program, does the panel educate the public about invasive trees, like in schools, et cetera? I think that there's a decent question about, are we still continuing to bring in invasive species, as landscaping plants, as, that sort of thing? Go ahead, Flint.
Well, I think we're doing a much better job now than, say, 10, 20, 30 years ago, and even longer ago than that. It was more of a challenge. But there's always, we can always improve, and most of the invasive species committees are still, part of their work is to stop new non-native species that have been introduced. They're still doing that, and they probably will continue to do that. But I think our consciousness about it is improved a lot across conservation groups, resource managers, industry, nursery industry folks. I think the understanding about controlling for non-native introductions is improved vastly. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
I do agree. We do have to do better because the laws aren't there to restrict invasive plants from coming in. And so everybody's got to know, and everybody's got to do better. And so thank heavens now there's resources to be able to look for non-invasive plants. We've got websites and things like that. The university's done lots of work behind it. Plant Pono is a great example. You can look for a non-invasive plant, something that's been studied, and there's been a risk assessment done on it. And
what's Plant Pono?
It's a website that houses all of this research. It's 49 questions about a plant. It's a background check on a plant. And more than 2,000 plants have been screened for their risk of being invasive. So it'll tell you if it's invasive or not. You can make your decision whether you want to plant it or not.
Because people do need to have this in their mind, so that when they make decisions around their properties or in their businesses, that they just have a consciousness of this, right? An interesting point to be made, and I was kind of getting this earlier. Constance from Hawaii Island, 25 years ago when plantations closed, new landowners like Bishop Estate planted eucalyptus instead of native trees like koa. Eucalyptus is a fire hazard and overruns the landscape. We need to learn from past mistakes and plant native species. The albizia trees are still everywhere. And then there's also growing industries. Coffee, is coffee an invasive plant?
It can get out, but I'm not going to give up my coffee.
But I mean, on that question, are we still on an industrial level replacing forests with non-native species? Is that too hard a question?
It's a hard question. We don't have large, major production agriculture planting new things right now. I'm not saying that we won't. When we had this big push for biofuels, that was part of the eucalyptus thing. Oh, we're going to plant these new things. That's how, a lot of new albizia
trees that grow
moved.
fast.
Right, they need trees that grow fast, turns out. We're imperfect, and we can always do better. And I think that that's what we just need to commit to. We can't just shame ourselves for the past. It is a shame, but we need to look to the future and just know that there's tools, and we need to try to improve.
And I think using albizia as an example, large areas of the Big Island were overgrown with albizia, Puna in particular. And when Hurricane Azelle hit, caused a lot of destruction and damage, and miraculously there were no fatalities. But I think everybody looked at that and learned, and there's been a tremendous reduction in the area occupied by albizia across the Big Island because people understood the need, acted on it, and folks came up with solutions that would actually work in terms of control and management.
The consciousness of individuals and individual landowners and so on, along with the support of the government.
And collective work with agencies. DOFA folks worked very hard to control, along with HELCO, along with other
Big Island Invasive Species Committee. Yep.
Big Island Invasive Species Committee, of course.
Let me ask you a little bit about science, because I've got a couple of questions. I'm going to just say, Cheryl from Maui, I believe we can save our native forests and need to do our best to do so. We need to all be part of the solution. Malama Ka'aina. Another one was about the seed bank at the Bishop Museum. I'm wondering, is there progress being made in science to help get healthy species out that may not be exactly like the species that were there before, but are resistant to these invasions?
Well, there's a seed bank at the university at Lion Arboretum, and there's a network of seed banks across the state that do seed saving. They provide the seeds back to those communities that they're collected from, because it is not just for keeping. It really is like a bank in that you can withdraw those seeds and put them back. So I do think that that's part of a solution. And having people that are willing and eager to do it, that's an exciting thing.
And there's an ohia, now a seed bank that was developed in response to rapid ohia death and the concern over forest loss, and also the need to collect seed that may turn out to be resistant to the disease, which is an ongoing program testing various populations of ohia to see whether there's innate resistance to rapid ohia death. And so that's all part of this kind of larger effort that's multi-agency and a very good approach that's set up in Hawaii. And I think a little bit unusual when you compare to other states, how well everybody works together to try to tackle these huge problems.
Yeah, I just got a couple of questions about ohia. Someone saying no one's mentioned it yet. Well, we just mentioned it. Thank you. Have we taken enough measures to preserve ohia trees? How, Dave Smith with DLNR, How long a process are we talking about to really restore a forest?
Well, a lot of this is generational work. And like I say, we've seen really good response in certain areas where, you've seen the forest come back, but there's still a long way to go before it really becomes a really rich, mature native forest. It's sort of like, a good wine or something. It just keeps getting better with age. And so a lot of these forests get more and more diverse and more multi-layered, like Christy was talking about earlier. So you can see really quick results, but really we're talking about generational work, things that are going to get better and better with time. If you're talking about putting in a koa forest, yeah, you can have a pretty nice forest in 20, 25 years, but you're going to have a really nice forest in 100 years. So this is, a lot of this is, the old proverb of, planting trees under whose shade you don't ever are never going to sit. It's part of what we're doing here is we're, working for future generations.
Right. I had two questions about sandalwood, and I've always been fascinated by the sandalwood story because when I was middle school, they tell you about the sandalwood thing. And in the 1800s, sandalwood had been cut down and sent to China, resulting in the neglect of our forested resources. That's a call from Moani. And can we restore native sandalwood forests on Diamond Head? Does the panel agree this can be done? That's Michelle from Diamond Head State Foundation. Sandalwood, is that, what kind of a tree is that, or a plant? I'm not even familiar with it. Other than I remember hearing about sandalwood. What kind of a plant is that? Where does that go? Is that something people can plant anymore?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Flint might be able to answer better than I.
Okay, Flint.
Well, it tends to be a kind of a moist forest species that is often associated amongst other species in the forest. That actually is considered a hemiparasite, so it kind of gloms onto other tree species. So best bet is to have sandalwood mixed in with amongst other healthy components of a forest. But
so it's not the first thing you would plant?
I don't have enough experience to say one way or another.
There's a great program going with Hawaiian in South Kona.
Yeah.
And they have a working sandalwood forest, and they plant both sandalwood and the other species. So sandalwood is hemiparasitic. It'll probably parasitize, 4 or 5 or more other trees in the course of its lifetime. So it's part of a living, evolving forest. But they are doing a working forest, planting out sandalwood, removing all the animals, and restoring the native forest. And starting out with harvesting a lot of the old dead and dying sandalwood, but now starting to plant a whole new generation. And you're going to have a thriving native forest that is also a sustainable sandalwood forest producing sandalwood oil and sandalwood products. So it's an example of how you can create an economic model to also have a native forest.
This is a question from Jeffrey from Hawaii Island. The best way to restore the forest would be to eliminate all of the feral goats, sheep, and deer from the islands. It's Jeffrey from Hawaii Island. Kualiʻi, Camara, how much of an effort is there being made in your guys' properties to eliminate these, or at least control them? It must be tremendously labor intensive to try and deal with something like that.
For us, our biggest concern on Mauna Kea is the feral cattle. They're by far the most destructive. They're big animals. They're stripped here. But I think for me, I think for us we try and find that balance, and so similar to the sandalwood, for us, it's getting that story out about the koa. The koa does. It does ecosystem services. It catches water, provides habitat for our birds. It builds soil, but it also is a very valuable species. So for us, it's for DHHL, we might not have so we have a different responsibility than DLNR and DOFA. But so we're looking for that balance. So we're looking for ecosystem services, watershed function, but also to have a product. So an agricultural product for our beneficiaries, and koa kind of fits that. Koa kind of fits that model. So yeah, so I'm going back a little bit to what we were saying earlier. It's not so much the physical work; it's getting that awareness out that there are ways to get the best of both worlds, where we can still keep our water cycles going, support our people and have sustainable industry that's in alignment with the Wawakua, So for us, yeah, I don't, so we do have cattle, and it is a big issue. But to me, the larger issue is those social issues and the valuation, and having the value system that values our forests and can see a future with where forests and people can coexist.
I got an interesting question here, right on the point that you just made. What is the conflict between agriculture and forestry? Marilyn and Mililani, I spent some time on the Big Island doing the story about the beef industry on the Big Island, and there's a lot of hope that the beef industry could really grow, but that requires pasture management, and so on. Let me ask Christy Martin, do you think there is a conflict there, or do you think they could somehow complement each other in their mutual growth?
I think that there's space for both, absolutely. There's pasture lands that, absolutely are great for pasture. The more we eat local, the less invasive species we import. And so identifying where those lands are that are going to be good for pasture raised or whatever type of ranching we're going to do. Areas that are perhaps set aside for hunting, because subsistence is very important. But of course, the thing that always gets the short end of the stick are those areas that are preserved for the native species and the ecosystem function. And of course, with that comes the cultural gathering and cultural practices that are so tied to those ecosystems. I think there's space for all of them.
Just one thing, just getting back to the question about just ungulates and focusing a little bit on Rapidohia death that we've been working hard to understand, and we do see a strong connection between the wounding that ungulates do, not feral ungulates, I want to be specific, not necessarily cattle on ranches that are managed and that are not wounding trees because they're starving to death. But feral animals, including feral pigs, feral swine, we're seeing a direct connection between the wounding that they're doing, the beetle activity that's putting out, that's emitting the infected material from infected trees, that's then picked up by animals, who then wound the trees, and then that starts the cycle of mortality in that particular tree. And so we are seeing strong connections between ungulates and forest health in that regard with respect to Rapidohia death.
I did get a question on that. Sheep and goats seem to be overpopulating dryland forests and have large herds along the forest lines of the saddle area and state highways. Who owns the animals? Landowners or state, and what can be done to protect the dryland forests? Lori and Hilo. Again, I keep going back. You go to Maui and you see the deer just walking across the road all over the place. And then, how much? What hope do we have if they're overblown? Is there an industry there, for example, Dave, that they could have some hope of cleaning out that population?
Yeah, we're working. We've got a bunch of support from the legislature lately, and a bunch of resources. We've hired some more people on Maui and Molokai, and they are working on controlling the deer, working with local landowners. A lot of it's the big ranchers in areas where deer can get, find refuge, and maybe there isn't access for public hunters. We're working with the public hunters as much as possible. I think they've done everything they can, and so we're trying to find those areas where the deer are still thriving because there's a lack of access for public hunters, helping to drive industry, getting, the meat, getting like mobile slaughterhouses and the ability to certify that meat so that we can get it out to the public, allowing people to come and gather carcasses of animals that we're controlling. But it's a really good example. We've had year-round daily, no bag limit hunting of deer on Maui for 20 years, and the deer just exploded. Molokai last year got so bad, deer were just falling over dead on the side of the road. So these animals can literally eat themselves out of house and home, and so we really just need to do a better job of managing them.
Do you run into that, Kualiʻi, on a big island? I mean, you mentioned the feral cattle. I mean, so there's cattle running around in the forest on the big island?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
Yes, and for us, the cattle is by far the most detrimental, especially to our ohia. But we do have a lot of sheep up there as well. And we do have and we see some synergism between our feral ungulates and our invasive species. Like for us, we have gorse, which is a large thorny bush that kind of just takes over the landscape. And it thrives in the presence of animals because it's thorny and the animals eat everything else. They eat everything else. So for us, it's a very big issue. The gorse is a very big issue. But we know that forests beat gorse. You know, if there's a forest canopy, the gorse eventually, gets phased out. You know, and a healthy food system phases the gorse out. But right now, we kind of have this perfect storm of.
Okay, Kualiʻi, I need to stop you because we are out of time. But I thank you very much, and mahalo to all of you for joining us tonight. And we thank our guests, Flint Hughes with the U.S. Forest Service, and from the UH Coordinating Group on Alien Pest Species, Christy Martin, David Smith with the Department of Land and Natural Resources, and on Zoom, Joseph Kualiʻi Camara with the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. Next week on Insights, there's been a recent uptick in COVID-19 cases in Hawaii and across the country. We'll check in with health experts to discuss how our hospitals are handling the rise, the newest strain of the virus, and what you should know about the updated booster. Please join us then. I'm Daryl Huff for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Aloha.